Good evening. Tonight it's December 13th, 6:30 p.m. and I'll get this webinar started. Thanks to everybody who's joining, and we are recording. And as you probably know, there's no live questions or conversation. However, you are more than welcome to send in a question. I'll do the best I can to answer it. I've had a number of questions asked of me in the last few days, and we'll try to answer all of those tonight. And with that, we'll kind of get rolling. So our agenda for tonight is, first of all, we're going to talk a little bit about what observers are seeing and a little bit of feedback, what they're telling me. We've observed somewhere in the neighborhood of around 400 different officials so far. Had a meeting today with an athletic director with a conference AD meeting. And three of the athletic directors said, well, we had an observer in our gym last night. So the observers are out there, they're watching games, and they're sending back feedback, and we'll share some of that as we go through this. Second of all, the biggest questions I think we've gotten have been on the designated spot throw-ins. And we're going to go through scenarios of that. And if you have a question or a concern after tonight, send me an email and we will get it answered for the best of everybody's questions. And then we've got some plays and points of emphasis. We've got a video on traveling and a video on mechanics. And those we'll show those at the end, and then questions after that. So with that, some thoughts, suggestions, observers' insight, things I get asked about, and some are sensitive, some are not, but wanted to talk about just kind of give you an overview of what we're hearing and seeing. First of all, the observers are telling me that people are hustling good and they're paying attention to detail and taking care of business on pregame and postgame and enforcing the rules, and for the most part, doing a pretty good job with mechanics. On the absolutes, we're doing a pretty good job on the two hands being an automatic foul, but we're still struggling a little bit with hand checking and bumping dribblers, and we've got to protect the dribbler. I've seen videos where the dribbler has been hand checked pretty much all the way across the court and then drives for the basket, and then there's a crash at the basket. And if you get this hand check early and often, I think you can take it out of the game. The games are so physical that we need to enforce that hand check rule. And of course, that goes on over to the shooters too. You know, we need to protect those shooters and not allow contact on a shooter. I'm hearing that the locker room pregame discussion could and should be a little bit more structured. So if you don't have a pregame printed out that you're using, highly recommend that you go into that mechanics manual. Or if you want to send me an email, I can send you a little structured pregame discussion, and you can use those in your locker room. I have observers who are telling me that they go into the locker room before the game, and there's really no pregame going on, and they're struggling to have those discussions. So start thinking about having something kind of structured in your locker room where you're just talking about the game and how you're going to handle mechanic wise. Your locker room, excuse me a minute. Jason, are you able to hear me? Jason, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
I'm having people tell me they can't get in.
I can't get in. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there's 64 people in.
Okay. Okay.
So
all right. Okay. Great. Great. No worries. I'll keep going. When you're working a girls' game, you're working boys' game, please, if you would, wear your proper patches and the proper officials shirt. We really like for you to wear the girls' patch when you're working a girls' game and wearing the boys' patch when you're working the boys' game. I know this is sensitive, the college shirt. For the life of me, I don't understand why you would wear a college shirt to a high school game. I know you would not wear a high school shirt to a college game. And so I guess I kind of think to myself, why would you want to raise expectations? At any rate, the college shirts are fine. I'm not saying you can't wear them. I'm just saying, think about it. Also, in your pregame, referee, umpire 1 and umpire 2, make sure you know your responsibility when you're on the court and during pregame. That ought to be talked about in the locker room. Okay, this is a sensitive one because this is what I hear. This is what I hear quite often. And so I'll just throw it out. Some people are wearing belts and some people aren't wearing belts. It's fine to wear a belt, but I think most officials prefer beltless, and you might think about going beltless if you buy that next pair of pants. I saw an official the other night throw a jump ball up, and he had his whistle in his mouth. That's a great way to get some teeth busted out. And I would highly recommend that when you throw in a jump, take that whistle out of your mouth and let umpire 1 and umpire 2 call it back if they have to. However, if you're the one throwing it, you've got plenty of time to put that whistle in your mouth and blow and bring that jump ball back if you absolutely have to. I think I officiated for 40 years and maybe called back one jump ball, and it was because they all chose not to jump at the right time. So it doesn't seem to happen very often. We need to make sure that we're using clear, effective signals and mechanics. Need to stop at the bench, need to give our signals, take your time, and use an NFHS mechanics. It's imperative that you use our mechanics. You're not working college basketball, you're working high school basketball. The preliminary signals on violations and fouls, we do a pretty good job of getting the violations and fouls, but we don't do real good at letting people know what's going to happen and what we have. So make sure your preliminary signals are crisp and clear. And know your shooters. We all know that we've had evenings where we were hoping that the right guy went to the line, and most of the time I think that's true. However, every once in a while we get caught. And so just make sure that whoever's there with you, that you have it pretty clear in your pregame who's got shooters. So you're paying attention to that. On timeouts, slow down and make sure that you're seeing the players to their respective benches, and then stay engaged throughout that whole process so that we don't have teams getting tangled up. We don't have comments being made. Just make sure everybody gets to their benches. And then during timeouts, if you as officiating crew are getting together to discuss something, that's fine. Do it after everybody's at their bench, and do it briefly. The conversation shouldn't last more than 15 seconds. And you shouldn't have to have a discussion at each timeout. So pregame that, talk about it, and get everybody on the same page. And then when you're officiating during live ball, move with purpose. If you're lead and you're going to cross that lane, move with purpose. Be brisk about it. And always fight for the proper angle. Make sure you're moving for a good look through. And then hustle, don't hurry. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. Couple statistics that might be a little bit interesting, but talk also in your pregame about officiating your primary coverage area and your responsibility to cover that area. So a little stat, approximately 60% of the calls come from C, 5% from trail, and 35% from the lead. I think that's partly because we need to know where we're going to fish for our calls, and then our pregame is key to this. And then the center official, try to initiate rotation when the ball is near the center line on your side of the court. So it's okay to initiate a rotation as center when you're covering a matchup near the center line on your side. And then trails, how can you be more involved? 5% is not much, so how can you be more involved? And then stay involved on rebounding. Stay in there on rebounding. And there's no sin to getting getting beat at the other end. The most important thing is that we get the rebounding and the contact that happens there. So be sure that you're pre-gaming that.
Chuck, I got one question for you here. I'll read to you
Okay.
before you go on. This reads, since we can wear the men's college shirt for boys' games, can we wear the women's college shirt for women's games?
No. We can't. No, we're not going to wear the women's college shirt for girls' games. Thanks for the question, though. Appreciate it. So here's the big thing, the designated throw-in spots. So when the ball is put in play in the front court due to a violation or common foul, one of the 4 designated throw-in spots shall be used. And you can see on the diagram where those 4 spots are. Keep in mind the 2 designated spots on the baseline are 3 feet outside of the lane line. So when you put that ball in play, move them out a little bit and put the ball in play there. You can also see the dotted line where the dividing area is. So for any foul or violation occurring inside the dotted area, you shall put that ball in, put it in play at the nearest inline spot. For any foul or violation occurring outside the dotted area, you should put the ball in play at the nearest sideline spot. For a ball that simply goes out of bounds in the front court, the throw-in spot is the actual spot the ball went out of bounds. So the ball's tipped out of bounds by a defender, we're going to put it in play right there. Now, in the rule book, it doesn't have a page number, but if you open it, it's the third page, under 2023-24 points of emphasis. If you look at throw-ins and proper locations, they share it pretty clearly there about what you should be doing on throw-ins. So I would encourage you to read that again, talk about that in your pregame, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. Now let's talk about timeouts. So for throw-ins that result from a timeout being called while the ball is in play. So while the ball's in bounds, player calls timeout and they're in the front court. The throw-in spot is the closest of the 4 designated throw-in spots to where the ball is when the timeout is called. So So if I call timeout while I'm in bounds, we're in the front court, we're gonna go to one of the 4 designated spots. Now, let's say we have a dead ball timeout. When a timeout is called when the ball is already out of bounds. So we got a guy, team A is standing waiting to make a throw in. Coach calls timeout. Now we're gonna stay right there where we were. We're gonna put the ball in play right there. So that's the 2 different things in timeout. And let's see. Question was, if we're doing a boy-girl doubleheader, are you wanting us to change shirts between games if we're wearing a shirt with a logo? I would say that's a good idea, if you can. That'd be great. And good question here. When are we going to when will schools start marking the 28-foot mark? That's something I will deal with right away and get that taken care of. I've noticed the same thing when I go to games that they don't always have it marked very well. So we will definitely get that taken care of. So offensive team calls a timeout while A1 is in position of the ball in their front court. The throw-in spot is the nearest of the 4 designated spots that is closest to where the ball was when the timeout was called. Pretty clear. I call timeout while I'm on the court. Coach calls timeout while we have the ball in the front court. We're going to go to a designated spot. One of the confusing parts of this rule was that the National Federation used the word designated in too many spots. So we're trying to clarify that a little bit. And I think that will help. So another example, ball is deflected out of bounds and the result is an offensive team throw in their front court. Either of the teams then calls a timeout. The throw-in spot following the timeout is the spot where the ball went out of bounds. So the timeout had no effect on it. We're going to put the ball in play where it was supposed to. Prior to the bonus, Team B fouls a Team A player in Team A's front court. Prior to the throw-in, either of the teams calls a timeout. Following the timeout, the throw-in spot will be the nearest of one of the 4 designated spots that is closest to the spot of the Team B foul. Okay, clear. And A1 attempts a bounce pass to A2 and defender B1 kicks the ball, resulting in a violation. Either team then calls a timeout. Following the timeout, the throw-in spot will be at the nearest of the 4 designated spots that is closest because it was intentionally kicked. Backcourt throw-ins. The throw-in spot is the nearest spot where the ball went out of bounds or the violation, foul, or interruption was occurred. So let's say we have a foul and we have an offensive violation in the front in the Team A violation in their backcourt. Ball's going to go over to Team B. Now that becomes a designated throw-in spot, one of the 4 spots for the new Team A. So for the most part, I've seen that adjudicated pretty well, but just wanted to do a little refresher on this. Okay. Any more questions on designated throw-in spots? I know that it's been confusing as heck, and I apologize for that. Okay, so let's try. So here's a couple questions that I had that were asked, and I'll do these before we do the video. This was a question. If the 5th team foul committed in a quarter is a player control foul, do you shoot the free throws? And the answer is no, it's a player control foul. You're not going to shoot those free throws. And then a technical foul on the bench. So the inbounding team will get the ball opposite the table. And you're going to get that at the division line. That's not going to be a designated spot throw-in. So if you have a technical foul, the throw-in is going to be at the division line. It does make a difference. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that and you handle that appropriately. Okay, I'm going to show a video. One of our big issues is signals, and I want to start and show this video. And I'm going to keep it small because I've had people tell me that it gets a little choppy if I make it big. So actually, I'm going to make it big, and if it's choppy, let me know and I'll shrink it.
And what is supposed to happen next. Good signals can teach basic rules and philosophies to those watching without even saying a word. Yet bad signals may perpetuate misconceptions of rules, which in turn could lead to escalated conflict or confusion. So, as officials, we are by default educators of the game, and using proper signals every time is imperative to clear and concise communication throughout the entire game. Before we get some video examples, I want to say thank you to all these loyal viewers who have made donations to the Officials Institute. Your thoughtfulness and generosity is truly appreciated and helps keep our content free for everyone to watch and enjoy. Remember, you too can make a donation and support our efforts by clicking the link above. Okay, let's get back to it. Here we go with our series of videos on signals. Roll those clips.
Rapid relief that lasts and lasts. It's comeback season.
Hi, I'm Nicole Hockley from Sandy Hook Promise. I know this is hard to hear, but it's important.
In our first clip, there is a missed shot, and on the rebound, a foul is called for a collision under the basket. But what was the call? After the foul happens, the official sounds his whistle to stop the clock by properly extending his arm with a clenched fist into the air. But the signal that comes next should be the signal that explains what foul just happened. 2 fingers pointing down to the floor is not an approved signal. But come on, what's the big deal? Everyone knows what it means, right? But it is a big deal because as officials, we know a player who was fouled while in the act of shooting is awarded 2 free throws, even if that foul happened while the shooting player was still on the floor. So by giving this signal, or any others that are similar, we are in essence telling everyone on the ground equals no shooting. No wonder we get yelled at so often about these types of plays. Not only are they not approved signals, they teach and perpetuate misinformation that leads to confusion and conflict in later plays. So stick with approved signals and become teachers of the sport by providing clear communication to everyone every time. Go ahead and watch that one again. In the next clip, we see a last-second shot that is missed due to a tip. And when time expires, the official waves off the basket by signaling no basket. But wait, there wasn't a score to wave off. Let's zoom in and talk about what happened. Let's start with the tipped ball signal. This is an approved signal for use in an NFHS basketball game. But what is the purpose of this signal? The tipped ball signal is meant to be used in situations involving possible backcourt violations. But that's it. It should not be used in a shooting scenario. In fact, When referencing the signal chart in the back of the rules book, we can see the tipped ball signal is not even listed in the shooting scoring category. So don't use it for that, and reserve that signal for its intended use. A signal that is listed in the shooting scoring category is the no score signal. So the official was correct using it here, right? Well, let's talk about that next. When a shot goes up at the end of a quarter, so close to the expiration of play that an official ruling needs to be made on whether the goal counts or not, the no score signal is an absolute necessity. But in situations, as in this clip, when the ball isn't even close to going in or released by the shooter well before the buzzer sounds, it is not needed, and its use should be avoided. There is a culture that has been created by officials to use this signal to tell everyone the quarter is over, regardless of whether a shot is even involved. And in most situations, it can be harmlessly performed without any negative repercussions. But if you get comfortable using this signal incorrectly every quarter, you may find yourself in a situation when it may cause conflict. A shot goes up at the end of a tied game, buzzer sounds, and the ball goes in. Your partner comes in and counts the basket, and you wave your hands like you do every quarter and signify quarter over. But what does everyone else see? They see a no score signal. So now you have one team thinking they've won and another team who thinks that they're going into overtime. Don't put yourself in that position and simply eliminate this signal from your end of quarter routine, except when needed. Here is that one again. In our next clip, we see a play advance into the paint and end with the official calling a foul on the shot. But what did he call? Illegal use of hands? Hold? Intentional foul? The use of a preliminary signal at the spot of the foul is not only used to tell everyone watching the reason play was stopped, but it gives information to coaches on what the player did specifically. And this is important so that they are able to coach their players on what to do or not to do to avoid this foul in the future. It also relays information to the non-calling officials and helps provide guidance on next procedures needed to resume play after the reporting is completed. So, using the proper signal clearly at the preliminary spot is important to do. One common mistake officials make is like what happened here in this clip. After the fist is extended in the air to stop the clock, the signal of the foul is shown. But what is meant to be an illegal use of hand signal is done too high and ends up looking more like an intentional foul signal. The penalty and following procedure for these two signals are very different, so performing the signal properly is extremely important to keep the game moving as smoothly as possible. Watch it again. The purpose of this last clip is to show how to perform the proper sequence of signals when ruling on a foul. First, when the foul occurs, the official sounds his whistle and extends his arm straight up in the air with a closed fist. If a shot is involved, the next signal to give would be to count the basket if the ball goes in. The preliminary signal of the specific foul that occurred is next, followed by the procedure that will follow. In this clip, watching shots at the free throw line. And lastly, point to the spot the throw-in will be. After this preliminary sequence is completed, move to the foul reporting area, being sure not to run through the players, but around them, as the official does here. Once in the foul reporting area, loudly and clearly verbally state the jersey color of the player who fouled. Then, visually show the number with two hands, with the first number on the right hand and the second number on the left, while at the same time, verbally stating that number. Remember, when reporting double-digit numbers, say the actual number, 25, and not each number individually. After the color and number, give the signal of the foul, the same signal from the preliminary sequence, and again, the process that will follow. By the end of this sequence, your partner should have all the players in their places and ready to go. Watch this proper foul reporting sequence one more time. There it is, a brief overview of the importance of signals. If you are able to remember these clips and why using approved signals are significant to officiating basketball,
And here's another one.
but it's not just one size fits all. Just because they all look similar, they could be very different. So knowing what to look for is the key to solving this intricate and difficult rule. So why don't we jump right in and start talking jump stop travels? Roll those clips.
What? Reese's Big Cup with
Sorry about the commercials.
caramel?
I thought I had them out of there, but
In our first clip, we see a player drive to the basket, take a big jump in the air, and return to the floor before shooting the ball. But no whistle is blown. Isn't this a traveling violation? Let's move in a little closer to find out what actually happened. When evaluating traveling plays that involve a dribbling or moving player, we must first identify two very important factors. One, when did the player catch the ball, essentially stopping from moving? And two, how many feet are touching the court? In this play, the dribbler picks up and catches the ball here. Now that we know this is the spot the player has stopped, we can move on to identifying which foot is the pivot foot. We see after catching the ball, he is standing with one foot touching the playing court, and the rules state that he is allowed to jump off that foot and return to the floor, but it must be with both feet landing simultaneously, which he successfully executes here. Let's review. Moving dribbling player, catches ball, one foot on the floor, jumps and lands simultaneously. This play was correctly ruled as a legal play by the officials. Watch it again. In this clip, we see a similar play with a dribbler once again jumping in the air and landing simultaneously to shoot the ball. Legal, right? Not exactly. Reviewing what we already know, when we watch this play again, we see a dribbling player catch the ball with one foot on the floor, jumping in the air, and landing on both feet simultaneously. So far, so good. Everything is legal and performed perfectly by the ball handler. However, the rules state that once both feet land simultaneously, neither foot can be a pivot. So once this player takes a step, he establishes a pivot foot, and therefore a traveling violation has occurred. So to recap, moving dribbling player, catches ball, one foot on the floor, jumps and lands simultaneously. Legal. Pivot, violation. Here it is again. Our next clip shows a moving player once again attempt a jump stop, but stopped by a whistle for a traveling violation. Based on what we just learned, this must be a traveling violation because he pivoted after landing, right? However, when we move in closer and analyze what happened, we see the player, after taking his dribble, catches the ball while airborne. This is very important in determining how this player may land and what he is able to do afterward. Since neither foot is touching the floor when he caught the ball, when the player lands with both feet simultaneously, either foot may now become a pivot foot. The ability to pivot is a very distinct difference from the first two plays and can make it a little more difficult to know when a player can or cannot pivot after a simultaneous landing. It is also why knowing the status of the feet at the time the player catches the ball is so important. Reviewing the factors of this one again: moving player, catches ball, no feet touching the floor, feet land simultaneous, pivot. Legal. Watch it again. Moving on to our next clip, we see a player make a step back move to evade his defender. But wait, why are we watching a clip on the step back move? I thought this was a segment on the jump stop. Well, that is exactly what a step back is, a jump stop that moves backward. Let's zoom in and break it down. As the player takes a dribble and starts to move away from his defender, he catches the ball here with one foot on the floor, and then proceeds to jump backward off that foot, landing on both feet simultaneously. Sound familiar? It should, because even though the player moved away from the basket, it is the exact same procedure as the jump stop move we discussed earlier. And because that rule does not make any distinction for the direction of the jump, was ruled correctly as a legal play by the officials. So to reiterate, moving player, caught ball with one foot on the floor, jumps off that foot and lands simultaneously on both. Legal play. Here it is one more time. In our last clip, we watch another step back play. However, this time the officials call a traveling violation. But why? It looks like the last clip where we explained it was a legal backward jump stop move. When we examine this play closer, we'll see it's not the same. And though the difference may be slight, it is indeed different. It starts with the usual moving player catching the ball with one foot on the floor. But when he jumps off that foot, he clearly lands on one foot followed by the other foot. And because of that, the step back move is not legal. Remember, even though a moving dribbling player is allowed to jump off one foot, if they land, it must be with both feet landing simultaneously, and not as he did here with a 1-2 landing. The final review: dribbling player catches ball, one foot on the floor, and jumps off that foot, but then lands with a 1-2 fashion. This play was properly ruled a traveling violation. Look at that one more time. There it is, our complete analysis of the jump stop and step back move. I'm confident after watching these examples of this very specific traveling rule, in your next game, you will undoubtedly be better prepared to see and rule on these plays more properly. Before you go, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel,
And
help
here's
us get into the homes of more officials by sharing this video. Remember, the more people we can reach, increasingly better the game will get. Spin move.
whoops,
Until we see you next time, have a good game.
my apology. Hang on. All right, here we go.
Are you in
Right?
or are you out?
Stop relying on what
Out
looks
of bounds
possible
plays are
and
coming up
instead
on
focus on the pivot.
Rule Review.
If you can properly identify when a moving player establishes a pivot, everything else should fall right into place. So let's get right to it and pivot the conversation into some video on spin moves. Roll those clips.
We start our series of videos with a post player taking a dribble and then spinning around his defender on his pivot foot to put in an easy 2 points. Great move, right? Well, actually, if we break down the play and look at each component of this move, we first have to determine where the player caught the ball, which appears to have happened here, as both hands are firmly holding the ball. Next up is identifying how many feet are touching the floor, and in this particular play, only his left foot is on the floor. Since the player continues to step onto his other foot, his first foot becomes the pivot, and more importantly, changes this player's moving status to stopped. This is important because after a player has come to a stop and established a pivot foot, the rules book is very clear on what can happen. In this play, he decides to lift his pivot foot, which is legal and should not be ruled a violation. And it's important to note that this is the case in every situation. It is always legal to lift the pivot foot, always. The action a player makes after the pivot is lifted is what is used in deciding whether a traveling violation has occurred or not. So returning to our clip, we see that after lifting his pivot foot, he returns it to the floor before jumping and releasing the ball on a try. Referencing the rules book, it states, the pivot foot may be lifted, but not returned to the floor before the ball is released on a pass or a try for goal. So, as soon as the lifted foot returns to the floor, if the ball is still in the hands of the player, it is a traveling violation. Let's rewatch that play one more time. In our next example, we watch a player dribble toward the lane, but then stops and changes direction, spinning around his opponent, only to have the score waved off by the center official with a traveling violation. Let's zoom in and take a look. We start once again where we should always start on any traveling play. When did the player catch the ball? Looks like he's holding the ball pretty good here. So we'll use this point to find the pivot. As you see, this player doesn't actually step on the other foot, but does more of a hop. But since the rules only describe two options, a jump or a step, it would be safe to judge that this move is more of a step than a jump. So with that said, this stepping action establishes the left foot as the pivot. Continuing on, we see this player pick his pivot foot up off the ground legally and steps toward the basket, also legally. But as soon as he places his pivot foot back onto the floor while still holding the ball, he has committed a traveling violation. Let's replay that again in real time. The next clip shows a player outside the three receive a pass, drive down the lane, and spin around his defender to finish with a layup, with a whistle by the trail official. But was this traveling or just a layup that got blocked? Following the dribbler into the lane, we see the ball is caught and held here with 1 foot on the ground. And as he spins around his defender, completes his move with a normal looking layup, taking the usual 1-2 stepping rhythm allowed in a layup situation. But just because he ends with a move that looks very much like a layup does not automatically make it legal. As this player steps around his defender onto his other foot, it officially establishes a pivot. And when he picks this pivot up and returns it to the floor before releasing the ball for his layup attempt, the move turns into a traveling violation and correctly called by the trail official. Go ahead and watch that one again. In our last video, we see another moving player with another spin move, ending with another shot attempt. Based on the last 3 videos, we've clearly established these types of spin moves are all traveling violations, right? Not so fast. Let's zoom in and see what happened. As always, We start with the moment the player catches the ball, here, and identify only one foot is on the floor. Watching the player spin and step onto the other foot, we confirm the right foot as the pivot foot. So far, everything is legal and proceeding as all the other moves. But if you watch closely, you can see this player legally steps toward the basket with his pivot foot, but never puts it back down and releases the ball with the pivot still in the air. And because of that, this spin move is legal. Go ahead and watch that one again.
And that is our traveling rule coverage on the spin move. Just remember, even though most
Well, that pretty much does it for the videos. I have one more question that I received today. Says we had a player who jumped to save the ball from going out of bounds. He came back in, established himself on the floor, and picked the ball up. The official said because he went out of bounds on his own volition, he could not be the first to touch it. So if he ruled that the player went out on their own, came back in, was first to touch the ball, that is a violation. If the player was out of control and was going as fast as they could to save the ball back in bounds, then if they went out not on their own volition, they could come back in and establish themselves and be first to touch the ball. So just a question I was asked and wanted to share that. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to try to do more of these. I'm going to try to do more videos, try to do them a little bit shorter time frame. But hopefully you got something good out of this. I will just pass along that we're very aware of what you all go through. We appreciate your efforts. We know you're all out there working hard. Most of the things we're trying to show you is because I've had so many officials say, I just want to get better. And maybe you've got something tonight that will help you. And if there's anything we can do between now and the next time we talk, please don't hesitate to forward on the questions, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. Oh, I did remember one thing, one other thing. Just keep working hard. The schools really appreciate your efforts. And we really appreciate everything you do. So from the Girls Union and the Iowa High School Athletic Association, we appreciate all your help, and thanks for joining us tonight. Have a good evening.
I'll pass along, Chuck, too. I know you would, this will download and we're recording it, so we can put that on our website and also put it in the Dragonfly and official sections of our websites too. So we'll make sure to get that in there sometime tomorrow.
And are they able to hear you say that?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, this is all recorded if anybody wants to watch it. So thank you so much for joining us this evening.